Hello, and a very warm welcome to This Woman's Work, a space where you can hear and read about some amazing women, the fantastic jobs they do, and the paths that have led them to where they are today. I'm here today with Natasha. Hello, Natasha.
Hello.
Could you tell the lovely listener what it is you do for a living?
Yes.
Multifaceted.
I am multifaceted, yeah, so it is quite difficult to try and put a label on myself. I've always struggled with that, and actually anybody who follows me will know that my Insta bio has probably changed about 1 million times just in the last 12 months. But I'm currently labelling myself a self-love coach and holistic therapist.
Fantastic. Okay. Got to go full into that.
Okay.
But before we do, I always like to go back and talk about little Natasha.
Okay.
And we go little Natasha, school, college. What were you like? What were you into?
Okay, so little Natasha, I was really into sports. So I was an athlete at school, really into like sprinting, running, was part of athletics clubs, like netball. That was my thing. I mean, I don't know how deep you want to go into like little Natasha, but a lot of that was to do with like trying to curry favour like with my dad, because actually like the only thing I was really praised for was how good I was at sports, essentially. So, you know, my first business was as a personal trainer, and when I actually look over my life, it couldn't have really gone any other way.
Right.
You know, because a lot of what I chose to do and probably still choose to do as an adult is rooted in, you know, like those early childhood experiences. But actually a lot of my early years were around trying to prove like, see, I am good enough, like by being the best and by being good at sport. So I think as children, like we're very quick to learn what gets us what we would desire.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, all I desire, like as most of us do, is our parents' love and attention and recognition. And that was the only time I actually really got it from him in a positive way. So,
and how did that? So, what were your friends like at school then, and how did they react to all of that? Were they all equally really sporty? So you were in a kind of similar group, or
no, like not really. I mean, I don't really remember very much actually, like of my early like childhood, because a lot of it was just spent trying to survive. You know, I had a very violent, very abusive, you know, upbringing. So yeah, I think sometimes the brain blocks out a lot of things, you know, and I've done a lot of work around like past trauma and that kind of thing, and I've sat with a lot of counsellors and psychotherapists and mindset coaches and behavioural experts and that kind of thing. And actually, you know, there is research to show that our brains develop differently, you know, from these formative like experiences. So it's like, whilst a lot of my friends were just like playing out and, you know, pretending they were in girl bands and like doing all of that stuff, it's like my brain didn't have that freedom to just be a child. My brain was like, okay, when I get home from school, like, what am I going to be walking?
You're on hyper alert.
Hyper alert. And I actually described my childhood as like living on a knife edge, you know, like just walking a tightrope. And, you know, how the day was going to go was never in my control. It was always out of my hands.
Okay, so did you go on to college or?
Yeah, so I went to college and I went in the September and I dropped out by the January, so I started like studying my A-levels.
Yeah.
I think I was
that
doing
sporting wise, or was it more academic?
No, so more academic. So I was always like interested in like human behaviour and like the human mind and understanding, and I think that probably does again stem from the childhood that I had. Like, why would you be a parent and treat your child, you know, like you're looking for answers, like, why has my life been like this? Because actually up until about the age of 10 or 11, like, I believed everybody's life was like my home life. Like we didn't talk about it. And it was actually when a friend, you know, kind of said to me, like we were just being a little bit mischievous at school. I can't remember what we were doing. And I said something like, oh God, you know, like my dad would beat me if he found out. And she went, your dad would beat you? And I was just like, yeah. And it was just in that moment, the way she looked, I just knew, like, oh my goodness, like maybe I've said something like, I shouldn't.
Yeah.
And that's when it all made sense, you know, like those things that you get told, that I say I'm going to own that. I used to get told at home, you know, what happens in this house stays in this house. We don't talk our business, you know, those kind of things. And it was like in that moment, the way she looked at me, it just like all made sense. Like, oh my goodness. And then she said, like, in a, you know, like really concerned fashion, like, what, he would really like do something to you? And I just went, oh no, you know, like I'm just sort of saying,
so
like,
your
because
brain
we're being,
adjusted,
you know, and it was like in that moment, you know, when then the lies began, because I understood, like, oh wow,
this could get me into a lot of trouble if I
it could get me into a lot of trouble. So I think, you know, like I chose a psychology A-level, law A-level, English, and
you did want to do that. Is properly trying to seek answers and justice, isn't it?
Justice.
Yeah.
And actually, I did like a values elicitation like practice with a coach a few years ago, and like justice is like one of my, you know, like top values. And it's like, oh, you know, and I think that's, again, it's led me to doing the kind of work that I do. And it's like, whilst I call myself a self-love coach because I believe self-love is the essence of what runs through everything I offer, it is just wanting, and I know it's not possible for everything to be just and fair and right for everybody, but I do believe that the more that we can tap into our own, you know, sense of self-love and self-worth and
make sense of,
deservedness, like the more that we can live like the life that we actually deserve, you know, that feels just and right to live.
Yeah.
You know,
rather than the one that was almost sort of forced upon us.
Yeah, or the one that's expected of us. And actually, you know, there is a book, and I think it's like the 7 Regrets of the Dying, and it's like that nurse who worked with is it palliative care? Is that what they call it? And you know, like the number one regret of the dying is that they didn't live a life that felt true and authentic to them. You know, they lived a life really for others and to be judged by others and based on what others thought. So I dropped out of college primarily because you know, my home environment was not conducive to studying. But what's interesting about that, so I went to college in the September, turned 17 in the October, and my dad left, like, literally a few months after I dropped out of college.
Wow.
You know, when you've been waiting for this moment, like, my entire life. But then he left. So, you know, with hindsight, I look back and it's like, well, I could have carried on studying had I known that, you know, in the end, I would have been able to, you know, have that peace, you know, and tranquility at home. But actually, I worked, like, from the age of 12. So I decided that actually I was just going to go to work and just earn money to basically get out of the house so I could be in a position to, you know, to move out. So, I just moved through, like, really the corporate world, moved into, you know, it didn't matter what job I had. I was always like, okay, like, I've nailed, like, this part of the job. Like, what's the next thing? You know, what's the next promotion? Like, how can I climb the ladder? How can I...
And so I think still always really driven, really focused.
How can I be the best? Like, what can I do next? Like, what's the next skill I can acquire? Because I was judging my worth based on, like, how much money could I earn? How high could I climb the ladder? What other string could I add to my bow? And then I moved to a different company and I was like, oh, you know, that whole, like, oh, I'm earning more than my age. Like, I'm winning at life. Like, my salary is higher than my, you know, age. And then just to sit, you know, I'd bought a house with a local boy and, you know, just fallen into that, you know, living like 10 minutes down the road.
Being successful, or what you thought was success looked like.
It's like, oh, I'm like 22, I own my own home, we've got 2 cars on the drive, we're both earning more than our age, and like, but there was a part of me inside where it was like, if this is how my life is now going to pan out for the next like 40 odd years until I retire, like, shoot me now. I had the house and the job and all the things. And then what happened is my cousin died on my 23rd birthday. And I'd already been feeling, like I said, like, God, is this all there is? Because, like, I've ticked the boxes of what a parent's success looks like. And this does not feel like success for me. And then I was out for my birthday dinner. And then my mum just called and basically told me that my cousin had died. And he was, like, 27, had 3 young children. And I just remember, like, I just got up and I just walked, like, out of the restaurant. And it was, like, almost like in that moment, and I'm not saying, like, we were, like, really close or anything, you know, like that, but it was, like, almost in that moment, I just knew that my life would just never be the same. I just knew it was just, like, a pivotal moment. And it's not like you know, it was the first death I'd experienced. I hadn't, you know, like, I think I'd gone through, you know, like, probably lost about 7 people close to me, like, in the 8 years prior to that. You know, like, one of my first boyfriends had committed suicide, my nan died, my granddad died, my uncle died, like, again on my birthday, like, so many things had happened, you know, like, in that sort of 7 to 8 years. But it was like something in his death sparked something in me. And maybe it was the age, you know, because there was only like 4 or 5 years, you know, like between us. And I just thought, life is so short. We're all out here talking about, oh, could do this, might do that, waiting for the time to be right, waiting for this. And I do believe, you know, everything has its timing. But I also believe actually a lot of that is just us telling ourselves a story so that we can procrastinate and put blocks, you know, like in our own way.
Yeah.
Because we don't necessarily feel safe or have the resources to go, you know, go do it. And I just thought, no, there's not a chance. Like, I'm just not living out another day, you know, like this. So, you know, within a couple of weeks of like the funeral, I'd left my partner. I was like back at home.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd gone home, which was like quite hard, you know, like going back to my family home where there wasn't very good memories there at all. Leaving this, you know, like nice home and all of this stuff that I'd built up, and I was just like, I need to travel. So he died on my birthday, which was the 30th of October. By the beginning of December, I was back home. And then basically, I think in the March or April, I'd gone to Thailand.
Wow.
So,
and how did you know? So how did you know where you were going to go, or what was the plan, or was there no plan?
So I didn't have any friends that were like me. You know, like nobody wanted to travel. Nobody wanted to just go see the world and like get out of Peterborough. And I very quickly just realised you're going to have to do it by yourself because you're trying to be like everybody else. You've ticked all of these boxes. You are unhappy. You are unsatisfied. Like, it's time to go it alone. So actually, I found a company that did like organise, you know, travel. Brilliant, yeah. And I found that actually I went on this kind of like package thing, and it was supposed to be like for 6 weeks in Thailand. And I was 23 at this point, and there was actually only a few of us that were like a little bit older. Most people like 18, 19, on gap years funded by like mummy and daddy. And I just found myself in this situation where I was just like, geez, like these are just like everything I've been through. Yeah. These are just not my people either. But yeah, I just got to like the local bus station. I didn't know where I was going. I was just like, ticket to Bangkok, because I thought once I get to Bangkok, there's a lot of, you know, like English speakers, and I can navigate my way from there. And then I ended up speaking to a friend in the UK, and she was like, oh, my friend's in Thailand at the moment, do you want me to put you in touch with her? And I think sometimes, like, if you're in the UK, it'd be like, oh, well, that'll be a bit weird, wouldn't it? Like, oh, can I come and hang around with you? But when you're on the other side of the world and you're alone, I'm like, that cool, I'll give her a call. I'm like, hey. And actually, like, at the moment, like, you know, she lives over in Dubai, like my friend Donna, and like we speak, you know, like most days now. And this is like 16, 17 years on, you know. So yeah, like ended up travelling all over, like with her, went to like Bali and Laos and Vietnam and
oh my gosh,
Thailand.
So the universe really did have your back, because you then went on a whole way better journey.
Yeah. So came back, moved to Manchester.
Oh wow!
Worked for a law firm.
Whoa! How did we end up going? I'm going to move to Manchester then. So what you were still in Thailand, and you'd planned this before you left Thailand, or
no? So I came back. I actually met somebody in Bali, and I was looking for a way out of Peterborough. Like, I was just looking for a way out of, like, you know, like my home city. Yeah. Met this guy. Deep down, again, like, our intuition, it doesn't lie. Like, when you're tuned into your body knows, like, he was not the one. Yeah. But I grasped onto him, like, my ticket out of here. Yeah. So, like, within 6 months of coming back from travelling, like, I'd moved to Manchester. But even then...
So he was from there, was he? Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so he was from Manchester. And even then, it was like, I knew I needed to set myself up with a good job and be in a financial situation that I could support myself living there. Because even then, I knew it wasn't going to work. Yeah. And, you know, like, lo and behold, like, we moved into this, like, lovely, you know, city centre, like, luxury apartment. And again, got the job, got the apartment. On the outside, like, got the relationship, this nice-looking guy. He's doing his thing. He's successful. But actually, behind closed doors, you know, and again, it does link back to childhood. Unless you really do that deep inner work very early on, which most of us aren't even aware it's available, you know, until we kind of like reach a rock bottom or something's got to change, we end up often perpetuating the patterns, you know, like of our parents. Yeah. So, you know, like behind closed doors, I just found myself in a very, you know, I don't want to say like violent. I mean, there were definitely moments. Yeah. But just like that horrible, toxic cycle of just being like spoken to like shit, treated like shit, not valued, treated
horrifically. You know, to you, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, like,
you were like, okay, this is familiar, yeah.
And pretty much like just begging, you know, like begging for like scraps of love and like see me like I am good enough. And I look back now and I have to laugh because I'm like, sometimes I wish I could just like teleport back in time, you know, and go back into these moments and just say, do you know what, mate, fuck off. Instead of just being there like, oh, please love me, please see me, please, like.
But you're trying to correct, because this is what someone said to me recently, is that you get into those relationships, you recreate your childhood or your relationships because it's familiar and it's uncomfortable but familiar. But now you've got, as an adult, you've got a chance to correct it. When you, like you were saying, like you had no power as a child, whereas you're feeling you've now got a little bit of power, so you feel like you can correct it. Yeah. But of course, it never does it? Because it's just not right.
It's just so damaging. So yeah, when I was in Manchester, I don't know how old I'd have been, maybe 26-ish. I started going to yoga. So up until that point, all of my sports and all of my training that I involved myself in was very masculine. You know, like how hard can I go? How much weight can I lift? Right. You know, like how heavy? Like, oh, you know, a lot of women can't even do a press up and I'm here doing 30. You know,
like full press ups.
Like, you know, and feeling like, oh, that was my strength. You know, like, look how strong I am.
Yeah.
And actually, like, I think the fitness, like once I started seeing myself doing things in the gym, that did start to cross over into like a mental strength in the outside world. Like, oh, look, I'm doing things that I never believed my body was capable of.
Yeah, okay.
So now I'm able to do things that I just didn't believe I was capable of, you know, like in real life, like outside of the gym.
Yeah.
And then I started going to yoga, and that was like my first kind of like exploration into like living more softly. Because I thought those kind of things were just sounds so awful to say.
No, I know what you're going to say. Yeah,
just like weak people and soft people, and I didn't cry. I was like so hard, and you know, people who know me now, they'd just be like, "God, can't ever imagine you being like that."
Yeah.
But I was like an ice queen. Like emotions were for weak people. Like the whole man up. Like what are you crying? What are you crying for? Like get over it. It's not that big a deal. Like just move on. And then I went to yoga, and that was the first thing that really started to like, I actually like being slow and intentional and being soft.
And almost being in your own mind a little bit.
And just being with self. And how nice does it feel to actually do something that is nourishing to my body, not punishing. Okay. Because I wasn't going to the gym because I loved myself. I was still going with that mindset of like imagining that my dad's watching. You know, my body's tired and I'm exhausted and I'm aching. And it's like, oh, well, if you don't do another 5 pull-ups, then you're weak. Like, you know, like, what would your dad think? And then just finding that fire to like, I'm going to do the 5 pull-ups. Like, it's crazy. So, yeah, my yoga teacher, Nikki, like, she was my first experience of, like, just like somebody who's just like an embodiment of just living in, like, their authentic, like, living in their truth. And then she put me in touch with her, Reiki master in India. And then I ended up going over to India to do like my Reiki 1, like up in the mountains. And then it was, you know, I came out of the mountains like attuned to Reiki, and I was like, I am Jesus Christ. I want to just heal, you know, like the world and put hands on everybody. And so like that, it kind of like went from there. So Reiki was like the first thing that I did. And, you know, over the years I ended up becoming like doing Reiki 2 and becoming a Reiki master.
But at this point, you're still working at the law firm in the day.
Yeah.
So then, what next? This is what I keep going with. What next? Because there just is multiple what next, isn't there?
So what next is I got pregnant. Yeah. Before I even had a chance actually to process it, like within 72 hours, I'd got hyperemesis. I was being sick like 40 times a day. And
wow.
Yeah, it was just like absolutely horrific. Like the whole pregnancy was rough. And then I ended up having an emergency. So everybody was like, oh, you've had such a horrific pregnancy, like the labour's going to be smooth as anything. I mean, it started smoothly in the pool. I was doing my hypnobirthing, breathing my baby down, my lotus flower was opening and all of the things, and then it just went horrifically wrong. Like she wasn't crowning, she was back to back, her neck was like in a funny position. Yeah, she was getting distressed, and then before I knew it, like buttons had just been pressed, and it's like, we literally need to get this baby out. Like her heart rate has just dropped so rapidly. And then I went home, and like within, I think she was like 7 days old, I just knew I wasn't well. And it was crazy, like, how rapidly things just went downhill. It was like I went into hospital and they did my stats and my blood pressure was through the roof. My pulse was like 140, and this is like at rest, like laying on the bed. My temperature was like, and I didn't even realise like any of this. I had sepsis.
Oh my gosh.
I had sepsis. So they said you should be home in a day or two. 2 weeks and surgery later. Yeah, it was. So they said after like 2 days, when I was not really getting any better, and then the timeline starts to shift. Oh, we might just need another day, or it might be 3 or 4 days, and then it starts being like, we don't know. And then like within 48 hours I was down on like a side room on, like in a critical care like side room, again with an A, my daughter, because they didn't want to separate us. I'm still there trying to like breastfeed. I'm like expressing, I'm like and I just remember a nurse coming in, a midwife coming in, and she just said, I can give you a tablet that will just dry your milk up, because I'm here trying to be like a good new mum and do right by my baby, but like I'm literally hooked up to drip. I'm like so ill.
Oh, bless
and she's like, look, you've breastfed her for like the first, at this point nearly 2 weeks of her life. Like she's got that first.
Yeah, they do say that. Yeah. It's almost like the first few days, actually, even.
Like my nipples look like they'd just been in a house fire. Like my whole body was just like gone to shit, basically. And I was like, I don't want to, because I want to do right by my baby. And she said, what baby needs is a healthy and well mum. So I took the tablet, obviously felt really sad. And then it just got to the point where I was like catheterised. I had like a line sewn into one of my veins, a drip in the back of my other hand. I couldn't even like pick her up.
I know you have a little life in you yet. I know you have a lot of strength left. I know you have a little life in you yet.
I'd get pumped full of the drugs and like feel like almost human, and then it was like the minute they started wearing off, my temperature was like spiking up, my blood pressure, like nothing was really working. They said like, we're going to have to open you up and like, find out what's really going on. So I went into the surgery. They basically cut me open. I was like so infected. I had like hematomas, like just so much infection
from the cesarean,
from the C-section. And then I threw myself into becoming a bodybuilder.
Oh, but at what point though? How old was your daughter then?
So she was like 8 months old.
Okay, so you were a little bit better now than.
So I was a little bit better then. But when I look back,
but I guess still off on mat leave then.
So I was still off on mat leave. So after going through all of that, I realised that I didn't want to go back to like the corporate world.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, what do I love? Like, what am I good at? And obviously I always loved going to the gym. I loved sport. And I was like, I'm going to be a personal trainer. So when she was about 6 months old, I started doing like a, 6-month personal training qualification. And then a few things happened at the company I was working for, which just meant that, like ties were basically just severed. Like anyway, they hadn't necessarily been the most understanding during my pregnancy. So a few things had gone down, which meant, like we parted ways. And I had enough money behind me to pretty much take almost like the first 2 years like with her. So I started setting up a personal training business in Manchester, did a bodybuilding competition, like all of these things.
Wow.
And but again, I didn't do it out of a love for myself. I did it out of like, I must get that body back. I must like a point to prove, like still I've nearly died and I'm still gonna come back like the fucking superhero. I mean, they're all experiences, and I'm not going to judge myself for them, because at the end of the day I was just working with what I was available to me at the time. Like I didn't know better, I just had certain patterns and things that I fell back into because they were safe, they were what I knew, and that's how I got my identity, through the repetition of these certain cycles in my life. I started my fitness business when she was about 2 actually, but then like sort of sidelined it and then resurrected it again like in 2018. Okay. So I had a business called Miss Motivator, and that was really successful. Like just when the lockdowns hit, I'd got to a point where I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm actually like living the dream. I'm working maybe like 20 hours a week, dropping my own child at school, picking her up, no breakfast clubs, after school clubs, like no help, and I'm earning like more than I did working like 40 hours a week for a law firm. Like, this is it, girl. You have made it. Yeah. And then lockdown hit. When you're like, you've got to be joking me.
Just when you think you finally got it together. Yeah.
yeah, so what had really boosted my income was actually going into like local businesses to do, you know, like wellbeing days. So at that point, I'd qualified then as like not just a personal trainer and a Reiki master, but also a sports massage therapist.
Yeah.
So I was like combining also fitness yoga. So I was just working with businesses, finding out like what do your staff need. So I was just like, wow, like I can't believe like I'm charging like £800, £1,000 a day. Like this is wild. Like I come from a benefits family. I come from never having the right amount of stripes on my leggings. You know, I've got 2 or 4, but never 3. You know, like being that meal token kid at school. But like when I look back, like even then I was like entrepreneurial, because I'd get that meal token for my dinner and I was like, right, well this meal token gets me like £2.50's worth of stuff. And there's that kid over there and their parents give them cash. So if I sell them this token for £1.50, they're getting a quid, I'm getting the cash that I want to then go down the shops with my friends and get a portion of chips and be like everybody else.
Okay,
you know. So actually,
you were learning how to turn your life to how you wanted it to be.
It's just always been that way. So yeah,
but then of course lockdown happened, and of course all those businesses shut, didn't they? Or everyone started working from home, blah blah blah, furlough, everything else.
Had to find like a way to you know, to pivot. So pivoted my business online, took all of my, you know, clients online. But also I think what lockdown gave me was just the chance to reflect on, you've been going and going and going and going, and you haven't really ever stopped to ask yourself, like, is this making you happy? Yeah. Do you enjoy this? Because I was having that same Sunday feeling that I used to get when I was then going into my corporate jobs about my own business. Like dreading Monday morning, dreading Tuesday morning, dreading having to watch another woman step on a scale and measure her worth by a number. You know, like watching women like stand and be measured and knowing that they were sucking their belly in like just a little bit, like just to drop a half centimetre or, you know, and knowing that actually the women I was working with a lot of the time, the issues were deeper than their weight. You know, like if you think that losing like that last half a stone or dropping that one dress size is going to magically transform your entire life, all the shit that's going down, all of your problems and the way you feel about yourself, you got, you know, I never saw it happen, actually. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I never saw it happen. You know, women would open up to me about their childhoods, about their relationship, about, you know, their relationships with parents, intimate relationships with their kids, how they got treated at work, you know, like subtle bullying and everything. And it was like, the work needs to be deeper. You know, like I want to be the person that takes women into their blind spots. You know, into their blind spots, into those shadows.
Well, you wanted to take yourself into it as well, didn't you? So,
and I think actually, you know, again, I can't speak for all coaches, but I know with me, I will often teach or speak on what I also need reminding of and what I know. You know, I'm just able to navigate these things like a lot more quickly now because I've got like such a, you know, breadth of like tools and modalities, and also like I've got some really good friends now who are, you know, like who are coaches or who do this like, you know, breath work, and they have just done that inner work. They know the depth of the journey like themselves. So it's not that superficial like, oh, you'll be okay, or maybe you should go to the doctor, or, you know, like
it's what's actually going on. What is actually going on? One topic I do want to chat about very quickly, because I'm conscious that I'm taking up your time here, is the sexual therapy side, because I think a lot of women will find that really interesting. So what took you down that part? Within reason, you don't, obviously nothing too personal that you don't want to share, but and what did you do and how can you help women in that, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so I did a female sexuality practitioner training last year with a lady called Amy White, Temple of the Feminine. She's just incredible space holder, like a real pioneer, you know, like in this field of like women's sexuality. And I feel like everything I've done, you know, has just been a step. So you had the personal training, and then it was like the body work with the massage. I was already then in the background doing the energy work with the Reiki. So all of these things, and then I was doing like fitness yoga, and then like EFT, which is like tapping, and all of these modalities were just like linking in and linking in and linking in. But I wasn't really doing anything that necessarily, you know, like drops us into our heart and into our body. So I then actually came to cacao, So I feel like cacao then led into the sexuality stuff.
Okay, you're right. Okay, yeah.
So I was introduced to cacao about 6 years ago. And then, very long story short, in lockdown, a lot of people were like looking for some kind of advice or some kind of like, how the hell are we going to survive this madness? And that's when I really started sitting with cacao. Like, why do I always feel better when I drink cacao? Why does my heart always feel open? Yeah. Why do I always feel, you know, like full of love?
And just healthier.
Yeah, and just like really good about myself and about life. And quite often, like if I was, you know, if I would drink cacao, quite a lot of the time I would start to feel, you know, like quite amorous and, you know, quite like, yeah, let's have a little self-pleasure session.
Yeah, yeah.
But still, you know, there'd just been like a lot of shame around that, like there probably is with a lot of women.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of women were either like sort of dead from the waist down, disconnected, don't really have time to think about that stuff, or when we do, it's like a very quick, you know, like ticking a box.
Well, definitely in marriage, it's talked about something that you have to do, and yeah. Like a duty still, rather than something,
obligation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so cacao definitely opened up, like, my self-pleasure, like, practice, and always just made me feel like, you know, like, really nice. But there's still been, like, a certain element of, like, shame attached to it. So that religious conditioning, when it comes to masturbation, it's dirty, just make it very quick, and then you just sort of go about your day and you like forget about it, because
you definitely don't talk about it. Yeah,
you definitely don't talk about it. And then I don't know, like it just came into my field that I started seeing Amy's posts more, and I feel like things reveal themselves to us, like when we are, you know, when we need to see them.
Yeah.
And then I saw that she was doing this training, and you know, and she was like, I've got one space left, and you know, you're like, that is my space.
Wow.
And I don't really know why, but again, as I'm a manifesting generator in human design, and the way that my energy works best is I'm here to respond to life. So when I see something, or you know, somebody suggests, or something comes into my field, I should move with what moves me. I should move with what lights me up. I did that like a 6-month practitioner training with her in like 2022, and I'm just starting to like really weave it.
In person or online or both?
So online, but it's quite intensive. So we were doing like 3 sessions a month, practice sessions. So everything that I do with women, I've experienced myself.
Yeah.
Not just from Amy, but we were like partnered up with other women in the group, so we had to do like the practice sessions on each other. So I'm only really just starting to like weave that into my work now. So like at the moment I'm doing a group coaching program called The Woman Within, and I pull on all of the different strings of the modalities that I have. And then one of the things that we do is just a guided self-touch ritual.
Yeah.
So it depends on who you're working with, but you're not going to just go straight into like, oh, you know, we're doing that like internal work and like going straight up in there.
Yeah.
Because different people have like so many different experiences of even like
and hold ups and
what sex is.
Yeah.
Trauma, not even realising that they have been like sexually traumatised or sexually conditioned.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things that I came to realise like through this training was that my like sexual archetype is the performer.
Yeah.
I'll put on a show in the bedroom, like
I feel that.
Like you wouldn't believe, you know, and the guy's like loving life, and I'm just there like, I mean, it's all right.
But like you say, it comes back to the recognition bit, because you're getting the recognition, and I'm with you on that, where you're going, I'm doing all of this. Doesn't matter what I want. He's really happy, so it must be right. Yeah.
You know, and you're arching your back and you're doing all the stuff, and like it's like, where's your head at? You know, and one of the things that we learnt on this training was, you know, like Amy asked us the question about, you know, like when you are in like sexual union or you're having that sexual experience, like what sort of percentage do you believe should be on your partner's pleasure, and what do you believe should be on yours? And I think I went with something like, you know, like 50-50. I think the general consensus was about 50-50.
Because you all thought you should say that.
Yeah, or like that's just what we believed, you know, like that we're like, and I think, I don't know whether it was from some study that she'd done or some research, but actually it should be more like 80-20. So 80% of that focus should be on your own pleasure, because you should be having sex with somebody that you trust, that they are meeting their own, you know, they're able to speak out their own needs.
So they're doing their 80% and you're doing your 80%,
and you should trust, like, you're not just there to like, you know, like please that person.
Well, let's face it, blokes are doing 80%, aren't they? They'll always do what serves them, won't they? Let's be honest about it.
And actually, most of your focus should be on how are you experiencing it.
Yeah.
Does it need to be slower? do you even want to be doing it at all?
Yeah.
You know, and then learning about like the female anatomy and arousal, and actually it can take, you know, up to or longer than 45 minutes for a woman to become like fully aroused. And actually when a woman is fully aroused, your yoni pussy, I like to say, but some people are like, ooh, like it's just like, you know, so many like negative connotations. But you know, your yoni will have like a sucking in motion. It will pull the man in. You know, it will open and it will draw the man in.
Yeah, which of course would be pleasurable for him.
How often have women allowed themselves, you know, beyond that, you know, we all have that, you know, the sex at the beginning where you just like wet and ready, you know, it's like slip and slide, let's go, like, because you're so turned on. But, you know, like after you've been in that relationship for a while, how often do we actually give ourselves the time and the space to ask, like, what does my body need to reach the state of arousal that it is ready to pull this man in?
Yeah, okay.
Rarely ever.
2 final questions that I always ask people.
Okay.
1, and this might be a little bit tricky, so if you don't want to answer, it's no problem. What advice would you give to your younger self?
I don't even know if it's like necessary advice. Just keep trusting, you know, like just stay in your lane, keep trusting your own intuition, and it will all be okay. Like just have faith and just believe that, you know, as painful as things might be, or as difficult and as hard as things might be, I believe that life is happening, you know, life is happening through you. It's not happening to you. It's not even necessarily happening for you. It is happening through you. And again, I don't know if I've just made this up to make myself feel better about my own life, but I genuinely do believe, like, you know, like the more that we go through, the more experiences that we have, the more trauma, I believe it's because the more that we can help others, the more that we can be of service, the more that we can help, you know, like the collective heal, and the bigger the work that we're here to do.
The final question is always life advice, which I feel like you've given loads in this chat. But rather than to your younger self, just to kind of throw out what things you really believe in, or you just want to throw out there to women or to men, but just some really powerful mantras, whatever you want to say.
I mean, the life advice it's like, you know, when you look back on your life, how do you want to say that you've lived?
Yeah.
You know, and allow yourself to just be free with that question, like whatever comes up, and start to just observe, you know, if you, oh, how do you want to say that you've lived? Oh, well, I want to say that I've, you know, lived on the other side of the world, or I want to say that, you know, I only work 20 hours a week. Start to then notice instantly what will come in to try and tell you why you can't have that. Oh, yeah, but like, what about your parents are getting older? You need to be here to care for them. You know, oh, but I can't uproot the kids from school. How will I get the money to do it? And then that's where most people get stuck in the starting blocks, because we start to think about logic. And there's a really good book actually called The Surrender Experiment. Can't think who it's by. I feel like his name's Michael Singer. That's coming in.
Oh, well done, yeah.
That just came in, just it needed to. And that book, again, I read that book, and how he like just surrenders to life and just trusts and says, okay, and just ends up building like this multi-million-dollar, you know, like company just from saying like, okay, not because he chose that this is what I'm going to set out to do, but he followed the breadcrumb trail, and we're always been shown the breadcrumbs of what is next for us, what lights us up, but we try to attach stories to it. We try to, like, we're meaning-making machines. We have to make everything mean something. Like, oh, well, I like fresh flowers in my house, or, you know, oh, does that mean like I should be a florist? Does it mean like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or, oh, I've had a couple of people say that to me now. Like, does it mean that that's something I should explore? Does that mean that's how people see me? Like,
right, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Just
yeah.
We don't have to make everything mean something. Let it come, let it go. Like, just surrender to like what is, and just don't ignore those soul nudges. Don't worry about where they're coming from or why or like the how. Just trust that if you move 1% in that direction, like the rest will just you know, like reveal itself, because it will.
Brilliant.
There we go, ta-da!
On that note, thank you very much, Natasha.
Oh no, thank you so much.
If you would like to hear more about this chat, see some pics and read about how to get started in this industry and or this role, then please go to our website www.thiswomanswork.org. The link is on this podcast page and across our socials. Sincere thanks.